On that particular morning, nothing suggested I should step outside my home. Simply an unexplained instinct urged me to collect my car keys and head toward the aging financial institution located on Maple Street. Upon entering, I spotted my son's wife Brianna, dressed in an ivory business suit, engaged in conversation with the location's administrator. A collection of healthcare documents rested in her grip, her tone unwavering and distinct. Her mental capacity has deteriorated beyond functionality. Medical professionals have validated this assessment. Time seemed to halt as though all surrounding noise ceased to exist. Then an icy realization struck my core with force. Her scheme involved seizing everything my spouse and I had constructed across 4 decades. Yet Brianna remained unaware that my actions following that morning's discovery would ensure she faced severe consequences for each deception. Should you still be engaged with this account, share your current location. Each remark you contribute becomes another milestone throughout this experience. Should this narrative resonate with you, remember to express your support so its reach can expand even more. My name is Marjorie Hale, currently 69 years of age, widowed for nearly 7 years now. My residence is a modest ivory-colored dwelling situated in Portland, Oregon's suburban neighborhoods, where my late husband Robert and I previously cultivated rose gardens alongside our entrance steps. My daily existence follows predictable patterns: preparing morning beverages, reviewing printed news, maintaining several small succulents, followed by neighborhood walks. Never could I have anticipated witnessing the events that transpired. That morning, my own son's spouse positioned within a financial institution, methodically dismantling my reputation and independence through falsified paperwork. Prior to my entrance, my intention was merely stopping briefly to verify the account we had established during Robert's lifetime. Personal interaction at banking facilities remains my preference rather than digital methods, partially because human conversation appeals to me, and partially because those visits evoke our collective past. The day appeared entirely routine. Natural illumination streaming through transparent surfaces, the coffee machine's aroma drifting from behind the service counter, the receptionist's welcoming expression. No indication existed that several additional paces would transport me directly into a living nightmare. Brianna's identification came instantaneously. Her position, approximately 20 feet distant, composed, golden hair secured elegantly upward, her vocal delivery precise as though she had rehearsed her presentation. Adjacent to her stood Mr. Jenkins, the location administrator I had maintained acquaintance with across many years. Holiday greeting cards had been my annual custom for him. Today, his attention remained fixed, acknowledging her statements with agreement. My pace decelerated, and I positioned myself behind the partition separating 2 service stations. Intentional surveillance wasn't my purpose. Instinctive caution prevented closer advancement. Brianna's continuation reached my ears. Our sole objective involved securing Mom's financial resources. Her ability to identify numerous relatives has diminished significantly. Dr. Whitmore has advised us to proceed with establishing legal guardianship before financial vulnerability emerges. My respiratory function nearly ceased. Dr. Whitmore, no physician bearing that designation, had ever provided me treatment. A chilling sensation traveled along my vertebrae. Through the opening between dividing panels, I observed her unfold the documentation and display it before Mr. Jenkins. A conspicuous stamp, multiple signatures, medical documentations she's supplemented with rehearsed compassion. This situation has created tremendous difficulty for our family, yet necessity demands action. With a word echoed silently within my thoughts. So Daniel possessed awareness of this scheme as well. My son, who provided comfort following his father's passing, who vowed I would never experience isolation, now silently permitting his spouse to orchestrate this complete fraud. The surroundings became unfocused, as though oxygen had been extracted from the space. My cardiac rhythm accelerated. My hands experienced tremors. I secured my bag strap for stability. Within my consciousness, Robert's voice emerged. Never permit anyone to claim ownership of what you've labored to build. A deep inhalation followed. Remaining stationary wasn't acceptable. I emerged from concealment. My flat footwear heels produced sharp contact sounds against the buffed tiles. Attention shifted toward me. Mr. Jenkins appeared taken aback. Brianna rotated abruptly. Momentarily, color drained from her complexion, then instantly transformed into a fragile smile. "Mom, your presence here is unexpected." Her vocal delivery faltered, rigid and artificial. I straightened my posture, maintaining grip on my belongings. "My arrival serves to examine my personal financial accounts," I stated, sufficiently composed to create surprise, and your purpose. You appear to be conducting that examination on my behalf. The reception area's atmosphere intensified. Mr. Jenkins's gaze alternated between our positions, obviously uncomfortable. Brianna attempted maintaining her smile. Oh, misunderstanding has occurred. My sole intention involved ensuring security. The physician indicated you've experienced interrupted her firmly. No physician named Whitmore has ever provided me medical services. An authorization for anyone to manage my finances has never been granted. A significant error appears to exist here. Mr. Jenkins cleared his throat and addressed Brianna. Miss Brianna is Mrs. Hale accurate? Brianna wavered, directing her gaze downward toward the documentation, then upward again with an unsteady smile. Misunderstanding must be present. My intention was simply preparing arrangements. Should confusion arise, my vocal tone descended with increased firmness, confused as in confusing my legitimate signature with this fabricated one. I extended my hand for the documents. Detecting irregularity, Mr. Jenkins transferred them over. Rapid examination followed, and within moments, identification occurred. The signature was counterfeit, careless strokes, lacking the characteristic pull I've employed throughout my entire existence. My pulse intensified. I directed my gaze at Brianna without deviation. You fabricated my signature. Her lips quivered. She forced laughter. No, Mom? Perhaps a teller refrained from addressing me as Mom, I stated with icy precision. Someone attempting to eliminate me while I remain conscious doesn't retain that privilege. The reception area fell into complete silence. The youthful receptionist became motionless behind her station. Mr. Jenkins regarded the documentation within my grasp, then stated with increased severity, Mrs. Hale, I believe we should halt this procedure and authenticate everything. I acknowledged with agreement, maintaining visual contact with Brianna. She swallowed and retreated a step, clutching her bag. I observed her gaze waver, her confidence stripped away. I advanced closer, volume reduced sufficiently for only her reception. You've just inscribed your own judgment, Brianna. I addressed Mr. Jenkins immediately. Kindly freeze all accounts associated with my identity and anyone besides myself. Proper identification will be provided today. His immediate acknowledgement followed, and he signaled a colleague. During this process, Brianna mumbled incoherently and departed hastily. Her footsteps hurried. As the transparent entrance closed behind her, I maintained my position. My physical form trembled, not from fear, but from a frigid, constant anger that paradoxically resembled composure. Awareness existed that everything had transformed. I departed with the documentation secured in my downward hand and traversed the parking area. Natural illumination reflected off the vehicle's hood, causing me to narrow my eyes. Seated behind the wheel, I gripped it intensely. My cardiac rhythm continued its forceful pattern. Yet, awareness existed that I'd just obtained the initial weapon in a confrontation. They hadn't realized they'd initiated. The homeward journey consumed more duration than typical. Frigid atmosphere entered through the partially lowered window, transporting the pine-like fragrance of the established neighborhood. Within the rearview mirror, I observed my own countenance, fatigued, yet not fragile. A woman who'd experienced spousal loss and endured isolation can withstand considerable hardship, but she refuses to accept incompetency declarations so another person can appropriate what she constructed. And awareness existed that morning represented merely the commencement should Brianna believe I'd remain passive while they erased me. She was approaching the most costly education of her existence. Never challenge a woman you perceive as delicate when she maintains recollection of every numerical value, every signature, and every confidential detail within the financial institution. During the homeward drive that morning, Brianna's words maintained their repetition. She no longer possesses mental competency. The statement penetrated me like an arid, frigid blade, and years of recollections came flooding back, vivid enough to inflict pain. I recalled the initial day Daniel brought Brianna to our residence. She was in her early 20s, then gentile golden curls, a radiant smile, self-assurance illuminating her eyes. I recognized my younger identity within her, swift, animated, brimming with vitality. Daniel maintained her hand and regarded me with optimism. Mom, this represents the person I desire to share my existence with. From that day, I paid closer attention. I quietly checked the file cabinet. Several folders were gone. Some envelopes I'd tucked away in a drawer had vanished. And the bank card Brianna still kept it for me. I realized I no longer truly knew what was happening with my own finances. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman being pushed to the edge of her own life. Not by shouting or force, but by sweetness. by words so gentle they numbed my defenses. That's when I began to understand, not everyone who takes from you breaks in through the door. Some walk in with a smile and a warm mom. And only when it's too late do you see they didn't come to love you. They came to take your place in your own home. Nothing special happened that morning. The Oregon sky was a rare clear blue after days of rain. The first rays slipping through the curtains onto the polished wood floor. I made coffee like usual, turned on the local radio, and heard about a traffic jam on the Morrison Bridge. Everything was normal until something felt very wrong. A low restlessness pressed in my chest, like someone whispering that I had to go somewhere right now. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just the fatigue of age. The more I tried to ignore it, the louder it became, a quiet, stubborn call. I set down my cup, grabbed my keys. Maybe I just need some air, I told myself. No makeup, no change of clothes, just my gray cardigan and the soft, soul-worn shoes I wear to the market. I didn't know where I was going, but my hand had already turned the key and started the old Subaru. Instinct took me to the Maple Street branch, the small bank where Robert and I had saved for more than 40 years. That place held so many memories, opening our first account after the wedding. Robert's big smile when we finally paid off the house. The day I set a new passbook on the desk and said, "We did it." I parked beside the row of maples just turning yellow. Sunlight flashed on the building's large glass, reflecting my shadow on the pavement. I stepped out, pulled my sweater tight, and felt a cool breeze slip through my hair. It was so quiet I could hear twigs snapping under my heels. The glass door opened. The air smelled faintly of coffee and freshly printed paper. Everything was just as I remembered. The lightwood reception desk, the carefully vacuumed blue carpet, and the photo behind the counter, serving our community since 1974. But within seconds, I knew something was wrong. At the far end, by the branch manager's desk, stood a woman, and I'd know that posture anywhere. She wore an elegant cream suit, blonde hair pinned high, makeup flawless enough to erase any trace of fatigue. Beside her stood Mr. Jenkins, the branch manager who sent flowers when Robert passed. He was bent over a thick file. Brianna had sat down while she spoke in a voice that was soft, confident, completely composed. I stopped behind the stone column near the entrance, not ready to say hello. From there, I heard every word Brianna said. "Mrs. Marjorie Hale is no longer able to manage her finances," she said softly but clearly. "Her physician has confirmed progressive cognitive decline, so we just want to finalize legal guardianship. It's all in her best interest." It felt like someone yanked the rug from under me. My breath caught for a moment. I didn't know if I was awake or dreaming. "Mrs. Marjorie Hale," my own name echoed through the familiar lobby like they were talking about someone dead. Brianna went on, even offering a polite smile. "Here's a copy of the medical record. Dr. Whitmore confirms mild dementia and recommends limiting independent financial activity." I watched her open the file and hand it to Mr. Jenkins. White paper, a round red stamp, a sloppy signature. Even from a distance, I could read the first line. "Patient Marjorie Hale, 69 years old." I went numb. That was my name, my age. And they were twisting my life. In that moment, the pieces of the last few months snapped into place like a cruel puzzle. No mail at home, a new bank card, rescheduled appointments, and now this paper, the final piece I didn't want to see. A cold ache spread through me. I felt like I wasn't standing on the floor anymore. Like I was watching from above as my daughter-in-law, the one who called me mom, calmly erased me from my own life. Brianna kept talking in that steady, administrative tone. "We don't want the accounts to be abused. She's forgetful at times. This is just to protect my mother-in-law." She said it with pity, and I heard the sweet poison in her words. I looked around. A few customers sat waiting, no one paying attention, only me, the person truly on trial without being in the courtroom. I wanted to step out and shout that I was lucid, that this was fraud, that Dr. Whitmore didn't exist. But my feet felt nailed to the floor. My hand trembled. I gripped my pocket to steady it. I heard Mr. Jenkins's voice. "I understand, Miss Brianna. We just need to verify a few details before we transfer authority." I closed my eyes for a second, a flash Robert's gentle smile in our small kitchen years ago. "Never let anyone else hold the title to what you've built." I opened my eyes, took a breath, and felt anger rise steady. No longer afraid, for the first time in my life. I knew what it meant to be betrayed by someone you trusted completely. I tightened my grip on my purse and walked toward the desk. My heels struck the tile in firm beats. A few people turned. Brianna kept talking, unaware I was almost there. I had only one thought. If she could write me out of my own story, then, right here, where she chose to bury me, she would face the truth. So I took one more step, ready for the confrontation that I later realized changed everything. The air in the lobby felt thick. I stood at the entry, inhaled, squared my shoulders, and moved forward. My steps weren't just footsteps. They were the start of a fight. Heads lifted, conversation stopped. Morning light flashed on the glass, throwing a long shadow of me across the stone floor. Brianna stood by the manager's desk, still holding the pen she just used. At the sound of my steps, she flinched and turned. For a split second, her face froze, then melted into a flimsy smile to hide the panic. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her voice was dry and strained, like she was trying not to choke. The branch manager, Mr. Jenkins, looked unsettled. He stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Mrs. Hale, I thought you weren't able to." I stopped at the desk and looked straight at Brianna. "You might want to say that again, Brianna," I said slowly. "The incompetent person you just described to him, she's standing right in front of you." The room went rigid. A few people in the waiting area looked up, holding their breath. Brianna clutched the edge of the desk, her eyes drifting for a beat. "Mom, I just quiet." I didn't raise my voice, but the tone silenced her. I held out my hand, voice like steel. "Give me the file you just submitted." Mr. Jenkins hesitated, but my eyes didn't leave room for refusal. He handed it over. The paper was warm, still smelling of fresh ink. I opened it and read. It didn't take long. The flaws jumped out in seconds. My signature sloppy tentative strokes. A smeared red stamp. The line physician, Dr. Andrew Whitmore. I tightened my jaw. I did accounting for decades, read hundreds of legal files. I knew that stamp wasn't from any real medical board. I looked up, set the file on the desk, and turned it so Mr. Jenkins could see. "These papers are fake. The stamp uses the wrong font. This doctor doesn't have a license in Oregon. And this signature I tapped the first page is not mine." Mr. Jenkins frowned and took a closer look. His face shifted from surprise to displeasure. Brianna stood her ground, trying to keep her voice steady. "You're misunderstanding, Mom. I just wanted to keep your money safe. You've been forgetful, and I was afraid someone might take advantage." I cut in low and clipped, "Protect me with forged medical records, a forged signature, and a plan to declare me incompetent so you could take it all." She blanched, stepping back half a pace. "No, I wasn't trying to." I took out my phone, started recording, letting the beep sound aloud. "Mr. Jenkins," I said, eyes still on Brianna, "please confirm who submitted this file this morning." He hesitated, then answered, "Miss Brianna Hale. You weren't present." "Good," I turned to Brianna. "Everything you say from now on is on record. I won't let anyone rewrite my story." She swallowed and tried to steady herself, but her voice shook. "Please stop, Mom. You're making everyone misunderstand. I was only trying to help." I cut in sharp as a thin blade. "You weren't helping. You erased me from my own life and planned to stand in my place." She inhaled hard, then tried to swing back. "You're embarrassing the family. People will think I'm a terrible person." I met her eyes. "No need to think. Now they know." A murmur spread through the lobby. Tellers pretended to work but kept glancing over. Mr. Jenkins motioned to a staffer likely to call legal. I stood tall, eyes never leaving Brianna. "I want every one of my accounts frozen immediately, including any joint accounts with her name. And Mr. Jenkins, please prepare a written incident record. I'll sign and take a copy for my attorney." He nodded, face grave. "We'll take care of it right away, Mrs. Hale." I heard the rapid clacking of keys, then a printer. Brianna sank into a chair. Chalk white, she forced out a weak line. "You'll regret this. You're tearing this family apart." I answered low and measured. "No, Brianna. Truth doesn't destroy a family, only lies laid as its foundation do." She broke into tears, not out of remorse, I knew too well, but out of fear. Fear of what she couldn't control anymore. From that day, I paid closer attention. I quietly checked the file cabinet. Several folders were gone. Some envelopes I'd tucked away in a drawer had vanished, and the bank card Brianna still kept it for me. I realized I no longer truly knew what was happening with my own finances. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman being pushed to the edge of her own life, not by shouting or force, but by sweetness, by words so gentle they numbed my defenses. That's when I began to understand not everyone who takes from you breaks in through the door. Some walk in with a smile and a warm mom. And only when it's too late do you see they didn't come to love you. They came to take your place in your own home. Nothing special happened that morning. The Oregon sky was a rare, clear blue after days of rain. The first rays slipping through the curtains onto the polished wood floor. I made coffee like usual, turned on the local radio, and heard about a traffic jam on the Morrison Bridge. Everything was normal until something felt very wrong. A slow restlessness pressed in my chest, like someone whispering that I had to go somewhere right now. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just the fatigue of age. The more I tried to ignore it, the louder it became, a quiet, stubborn call. I set down my cup, grabbed my keys. Maybe I just need some air, I told myself. No makeup, no change of clothes, just my gray cardigan and the soft sole-worn shoes I wear to the market. I didn't know where I was going, but my hand had already turned the key and started the old Subaru. Instinct took me to the Maple Street branch, the small bank where Robert and I had saved for more than 40 years. That place held so many memories, opening our first account after the wedding. Robert's big smile when we finally paid off the house. The day I set a new passbook on the desk and said, "We did it." I parked beside the row of maples, just turning yellow. Sunlight flashed on the building's large glass, reflecting my shadow on the pavement. I stepped out, pulled my sweater tight, and felt a cool breeze slip through my hair. It was so quiet I could hear twigs snapping under my heels. The glass door opened. The air smelled faintly of coffee and freshly printed paper. Everything was just as I remembered. The light wood reception desk, the carefully vacuumed blue carpet, and the photo behind the counter, serving our community since 1974. But within seconds, I knew something was wrong. At the far end by the branch manager's desk stood a woman, and I'd know that posture anywhere. She wore an elegant cream suit, blonde hair pinned high, makeup flawless enough to erase any trace of fatigue. Beside her stood Mr. Jenkins, the branch manager who sent flowers when Robert passed. He was bent over a thick file Brianna had set down while she spoke in a voice that was soft, confident, completely composed. I stopped behind the stone column near the entrance, not ready to say hello. From there, I heard every word Brianna said. "Mrs. Marjorie Hale is no longer able to manage her finances," she said softly but clearly. "Her physician has confirmed progressive cognitive decline. So we just want to finalize legal guardianship. It's all in her best interest." It felt like someone yanked the rug from under me. My breath caught for a moment. I didn't know if I was awake or dreaming. Mrs. Marjorie Hale, my own name echoed through the familiar lobby like they were talking about someone dead. Brianna went on, even offering a polite smile. "Here's a copy of the medical record. Dr. Whitmore confirms mild dementia and recommends limiting independent financial activity." I watched her open the file and hand it to Mr. Jenkins. White paper, a round red stamp, a sloppy signature. Even from a distance, I could read the first line. Patient Marjorie Hale, 69 years old. I went numb. That was my name, my age, and they were twisting my life. In that moment, the pieces of the last few months snapped into place like a cruel puzzle. No mail at home, a new bank card, rescheduled appointments, and now this paper, the final piece I didn't want to see. A cold ache spread through me. I felt like I wasn't standing on the floor anymore, like I was watching from above as my daughter-in-law, the one who called me mom, calmly erased me from my own life. Brianna kept talking in that steady, administrative tone. "We don't want the accounts to be abused. She's forgetful at times. This is just to protect my mother-in-law." She said it with pity, and I heard the sweet poison in her words. I looked around. A few customers sat waiting, no one paying attention. Only me, the person truly on trial without being in the courtroom. I wanted to step out and shout that I was lucid, that this was fraud, that Dr. Whitmore didn't exist. But my feet felt nailed to the floor. My hand trembled. I gripped my pocket to steady it. I heard Mr. Jenkins's voice. "I understand. Miss Brianna, we just need to verify a few details before we transfer authority." I closed my eyes for a second, a flash Robert's gentle smile in our small kitchen years ago. "Never let anyone else hold the title to what you've built." I opened my eyes, took a breath, and felt anger rise steady. No longer afraid, for the first time in my life. I knew what it meant to be betrayed by someone you trusted completely. I tightened my grip on my purse and walked toward the desk. My heels struck the tile in firm beats. A few people turned. Brianna kept talking, unaware I was almost there. I had only one thought. If she could write me out of my own story, then right here where she chose to bury me, she would face the truth. So I took one more step, ready for the confrontation that I later realized changed everything. The air in the lobby felt thick. I stood at the entry, inhaled, squared my shoulders, and moved forward. My steps weren't just footsteps. They were the start of a fight. Heads lifted, conversation stopped. Morning light flashed on the glass, throwing a long shadow of me across the stone floor. Brianna stood by the manager's desk, still holding the pen she just used. At the sound of my steps, she flinched and turned. For a split second, her face froze, then melted into a flimsy smile to hide the panic. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her voice was dry and strained, like she was trying not to choke. The branch manager, Mr. Jenkins, looked unsettled. He stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. Mrs. Hale, I thought you weren't able to. I stopped at the desk and looked straight at Brianna. You might want to say that again, Brianna, I said slowly. The incompetent person you just described to him, she's standing right in front of you. The room went rigid. A few people in the waiting area looked up, holding their breath. Brianna clutched the edge of the desk, her eyes drifting for a beat. Mom, I just quiet. I didn't raise my voice, but the tone silenced her. I held out my hand, voice like steel. Give me the file you just submitted. Mr. Jenkins hesitated, but my eyes didn't leave room for refusal. He handed it over. The paper was warm, still smelling of fresh ink. I opened it and read. It didn't take long. The flaws jumped out in seconds. My signatures, sloppy, tentative strokes, a smeared red stamp. The line physician, Dr. Andrew Whitmore. I tightened my jaw. I did accounting for decades, read hundreds of legal files. I knew that stamp wasn't from any real medical board. I looked up, set the file on the desk, and turned it so Mr. Jenkins could see. These papers are fake. The stamp uses the wrong font. This doctor doesn't have a license in Oregon. And this signature, I tapped the first page, is not mine. Mr. Jenkins frowned and took a closer look. His face shifted from surprise to displeasure. Brianna stood her ground, trying to keep her voice steady. You're misunderstanding, Mom. I just wanted to keep your money safe. You've been forgetful, and I was afraid someone might take advantage. I cut in low and clipped. Protect me with forged medical records, a forged signature, and a plan to declare me incompetent so you could take it all. She blanched, stepping back half a pace. No, I wasn't trying to. I took out my phone, started recording, letting the beep sound aloud. Mr. Jenkins, I said, eyes still on Brianna. Please confirm who submitted this file this morning. He hesitated, then answered. Miss Brianna Hale. You weren't present. Good. I turned to Brianna. Everything you say from now on is on record. I won't let anyone rewrite my story. She swallowed and tried to steady herself, but her voice shook. Please stop, Mom. You're making everyone misunderstand. I was only trying to help. I cut in sharp as a thin blade. You weren't helping. You erased me from my own life and planned to stand in my place. She inhaled hard, then tried to swing back. You're embarrassing the family. People will think I'm a terrible person. I met her eyes. No need to think. Now they know. A murmur spread through the lobby. Tellers pretended to work but kept glancing over. Mr. Jenkins motioned to a staffer likely to call legal. I stood tall, eyes never leaving Brianna. I want every one of my accounts frozen immediately, including any joint accounts with her name. And Mr. Jenkins, please prepare a written incident record. I'll sign and take a copy from my attorney. He nodded, face grave. We'll take care of it right away. Mrs. Hale. I heard the rapid clacking of keys, then a printer. Brianna sank into a chair, chalk white. She forced out a weak line. You'll regret this. You're tearing this family apart, I answered, low and measured. No, Brianna. Truth doesn't destroy a family. Only lies laid as its foundation do. She broke into tears, not out of remorse, I knew too well, but out of fear. Fear of what she couldn't control anymore. Mr. Jenkins handed me the file stamped for temporary hold. His tone formal. You can take this to your lawyer. We'll send the originals to regional for legal review. I took it and tucked it neatly away. Then I looked at Brianna one last time. She stared down, shoulders shaking, blonde hair covering half her face. I wasn't angry anymore. What I felt was cold, clean, and hard as metal. I said softly, just for the two of them to hear. I let you into my home. I gave you chances. I trusted you on. You paid me back with a careful betrayal. But you forgot something, Brianna. I don't quit when I'm underestimated. I turned to Mr. Jenkins with a faint smile. Thank you. I think I've taken enough of your time. He nodded and stepped back. I turned and walked out. Each step was slow. Steady. Behind me, Brianna's hoarse voice rose. You can't do this. I'm the only one taking care of you. I stopped at the threshold without looking back and said quietly, if that's your idea of care, I'll take care of myself. The glass door slid open and the wind rushed in. The noon sun was bright enough to sting. I squinted, but inside I'd never seen more clearly. The breeze lifted the hem of my gray sweater like a flag just raised. I drew a long breath, the crisp autumn air filling my chest. In the car window's reflection, my face looked older. Maybe, but my eyes weren't weak. I was still the woman who'd weathered enough storms to know that some battles you don't choose. But once you're pushed into them, you win. I opened the door and glanced back in the rear view. Brianna stood there, small in the reflected light. I lifted one corner of my mouth, not from joy, But because her mask had finally fallen, when the engine started, it blended with the wind. What happened in that lobby wasn't just a counterpunch. It was the beginning of a fight, one with no room for mercy. As I turned onto Maple Street, sun filtered through blazing maples onto the steering wheel, and I whispered a promise to myself, from today on, no one writes my life for me. When I pulled into the driveway, the late afternoon sun was fading. Maple Street was as calm as if nothing had happened. Inside me, everything had shifted. I turned off the engine and sat for a long moment, hands still wrapped around the wheel. From a distance, I saw a figure on the porch. Daniel, my son. He stood with his arms crossed, face set like he was bracing for a storm. The door opened and there was Brianna on the sofa, eyes red, tissue in hand. Months ago, I might have softened at the sight. Now it looked like a clumsy play. I walked in and set my bag down. The house was so quiet it felt heavy. No one spoke for several seconds. Only the clock ticked and my heart beat slow and steady. Daniel spoke first, trying to steady his voice, but I heard the wobble. Mom, I think you're misunderstanding Brianna. She only wants what's best for you. I looked at my son for a long time. Those eyes once filled me with pride. Now they hurt. What's best for me? I asked softly but firmly. I took the file from my bag and set it on the coffee table. The dry thud echoed in the still room. Is forging my signature what's best? Brianna let out a small sob, fists clenched at her skirt like she was the victim. Daniel glanced at her, then back at me. His eyes dodged mine, unable to hold my gaze. In them, I saw not just confusion, but fear. Fear of losing the fragile comfort he was clinging to. Mom, he said slowly, his voice fading. She just thought you needed help. She didn't mean to. I cut him off, my voice lower, but so cold it even chilled me. Didn't mean to. She brought forged papers to the bank, said I'm no longer competent, and signed my name on a power of attorney form. You call that didn't mean to, Daniel? No one answered. Brianna lowered her face, tears running down her cheeks, but I knew she wasn't crying out of remorse. She was performing, and the only audience she needed to convince was Daniel. I turned to my son, forcing my voice to stay calm. Do you know what they told me this morning? That she's no longer capable of managing her finances. That I need a legal guardian. Daniel clenched his fists, but still said nothing. What does your silence mean, Daniel? I asked, my voice starting to shake with anger. Do you agree with her? Do you think I've actually lost my mind? He looked up, pain in his eyes. No, Mom, I don't think that. But you know, lately you've been forgetting things. Misplacing papers, mixing up appointment dates. Brianna's just worried. I let out a dry laugh, the sound slicing through the room like a knife. Worried. She rescheduled my appointments without asking. She keeps my bank card, opens my email, intercepts my mail, and now she wants full control of my assets. You think that's worry, Daniel? The air in the house sank. I glanced around the kitchen behind you, still had breakfast dishes in the sink. The faint smell of coffee lingering. The heart of the home, once warm with laughter, had turned into a cold battlefield. I looked at Daniel, slow and aching. Do you know what hurts me most? He didn't answer. I nodded slightly. It's not that Brianna deceived me. It's that you let her. You didn't protect me. You protected the person who's hurting me. Daniel closed his eyes as if my words hit harder than any blow. Brianna sobbed louder, grabbing for her husband's hand. I'm sorry, Daniel. I didn't want it to end up like this. I looked at her, my voice firm from holding back. Don't apologize to him. Apologize to yourself for forgetting what integrity is worth. Daniel stood, took a deep breath, and shoved his hands into his pockets. He avoided my eyes, staring out the window where the late afternoon sun lit up the row of blazing red maples. I need to step outside, he said quietly. Good, I replied. You should, because in here, I need air to breathe. He nodded without looking at me and walked out. The front door closed so softly it was almost silent, but the sound still left me hollow. I stood in the living room staring at the two half-finished teacups on the table, one mine, one Brianna's. The tea had gone cold, the surface darkening into a dull brown stain. That small scene made the truth plain. Not everything breaks with a sound. Some things shatter in silence. I gathered the documents, stacked them neatly on the table, and turned away. Behind me, Brianna still sat with her head bowed, shoulders trembling. I felt no pity anymore. I knew Daniel's silence wasn't just weakness. It was a cruel choice between two women. His wife and his mother, and he chose the one who knows how to play fragile instead of the one who raised him. As the last light of day slid across the floor, I stood in the kitchen where my family's laughter once echoed. Now there was only the sound of wind slipping through the doorframe. I poured a glass of water. My hand trembled slightly, but my eyes were dry. I understood that some wounds can't be healed with tears. Some losses don't come from death, but from the moment someone turns their back on the truth. And that afternoon, when Daniel walked out without looking back, I knew from now on I could only rely on myself. What do you think? What happens when the person you trust most is the very one who forces you to become stronger than you thought you could be? Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly want to hear your perspective. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was still with only the clock ticking and dry, steady beats like time scratching at my chest. I sat by the window looking out at the front yard where the streetlight spilled onto a thin crust of thawed snow. The quiet wasn't peace. It was the pause before a storm. Outside, the wind hissed softly through the maples. I wrapped a wool scarf tighter and stared at the home I'd lived in for more than 40 years. Every corner, every photo on the wall, every teacup with an old lipstick stain witnesses to a life of hard work and honesty. And yet, in just a few short months, it could all be erased by a forged paper and a few lies. I let out a smile without joy. If Brianna thought I'd sit still and lose, she was badly mistaken. I stood and walked to the wooden cabinet by the dining room where Robert kept an old safe. No one knew what was inside, not even Daniel. I knelt and wiped the dust from the dial. The numbers had faded, but my hands remembered the sequence muscle memory carved by years. A soft click sounded as the lock released. Inside were a few old notebooks, a velvet box with Robert's wedding ring, and a small black USB drive. I picked it up, my palm cold. This was the key to everything. Robert and I had built shares in the old logistics company, investment certificates, and even the hidden accounts Robert used to call for emergencies. When he died, I had planned to seal it all away, but now that my daughter-in-law wanted to erase me from my own life, the emergency had arrived. I sat down, plugged the USB into my laptop. The screen lit up and folders appeared one by one. Hale Holdings, Maple Street Property, Trust Account. Nor all intact. I opened each file, skimming numbers, e-signatures, and stock transactions only Robert and I knew. Every line was now a weapon. I opened my notebook and wrote a list of what to do. Check the status of shares at Hale Holdings. Freeze all joint accounts. Freeze temporary. Control to the attorney. Compile evidence of forgery by the last line. My pen shook not from fear, but from loneliness. The only person I could trust now was Pauline, the attorney who'd worked with us for over 20 years. I reached for my phone and checked the time. It was close to 11 p.m., but I knew she would be awake. Pauline never sleeps early. After 3 rings, she picked up. Her voice was steady and low. Even at that hour, Marjorie calling this late. What happened? I took a breath and told her everything, every detail. The bank incident, the fake documents, Daniel's silence, Brianna's tears. I left nothing out. And on the other end, Pauline listened without interrupting. Now and then, I heard the light scratch of her pen. When I finished, her voice came back, calm but firm. I know you're strong enough not to break, but right now, the most important thing is not to react loudly. Let them believe you're weak. I frowned. You want me to pretend? Not pretend, Pauline said. Strategy. The quieter you are, the more careless they'll be. You need time to gather proof and prepare a counterclaim. I'll recheck Robert's paperwork, especially the hidden accounts no one knows about. We'll make sure they never see it coming. I sat quietly for a while, looking out the window where the moonlight reflected on the glass. Her words warmed me. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. Pauline, I said softly, thank you. But I don't want to only defend, I want accountability. And you'll have it, she said. First, let me secure everything legally. Tomorrow, I'll send you a temporary authorization form. Sign and return it. Tonight, start archiving anything suspicious. You did accounting. You know how I smiled? Yes, I did. Recordings, photos, saving every detail, every email, every line on a statement, every conversation. Nothing would slip past me again. After we hung up, I sat a long time. The lamp cast a pool of gold over the papers. My shadow stretched across the table. The room was silent except for the clock and the wind under the door. I felt a strange strength rise in not anger, but clarity. I opened a drawer and took out the small recorder Robert used in meetings. I replaced the batteries and tested it. 1, 2, 3. My voice sounded clear and steady. I slipped it into my pocket with my phone. Before bed, I opened the laptop again and created a new folder. I named it Aurora because Robert used to call me that whenever he said, "You shine brightest when cornered by darkness." I locked the USB back in the safe, turned the dial, and heard the familiar click. Then I stood and looked around the dim room. Everything looked the same, but I knew that from tonight on, every step I took would have purpose. Brianna thinks I'm just a frail old woman. Daniel thinks I'll endure in silence. Neither understands that when a mother is betrayed, what she loses isn't trust, it's mercy. And when the first morning light touched the window, I was ready for the quiet war. I was about to start not with shouting, but with evidence, numbers, and recordings sharp enough to cut. That night, I sat and watched the sunrise, whispering a promise only I could hear. I will take back everything with silence, sharper than a blade. The next morning, a veil of fog hung over the sky. I was at the kitchen table pretending to read the paper when I heard Brianna's car pull up hard out front. Her heels hammered down the hallway. The door flew open so fast the picture frames rattled. She stormed in, face tight with anger, eyes red from no sleep. "What did you do to the secondary account?" she snapped. "The sweetness gone. The bank says my access is suspended. They said it was on your orders." I folded the paper, looked up calmly as if I had no idea. "Oh, maybe it's a security audit. They're careful these days." Brianna let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Don't play dumb, Mom. I know exactly what you're doing. You want to cut me out?" I only shrugged and didn't answer. A spark of rage flashed in her eyes. She spun and shouted, "Daniel, get down here now." A few seconds later, my son came down the stairs, face tired, dark circles under his eyes. "What's going on?" Brianna turned on, the tears turned on like a switch. "Your mom locked all the accounts, even our savings. I can't pay the insurance or Nora's tuition. She's punishing me." Daniel frowned and looked at me, wary and conciliatory at once. "Mom, is that true? Why didn't you tell us first?" I answered evenly. "That account is in my name. I'm protecting my own money." Brianna burst into tears, covering her face. "See, Daniel, I told you. Your mom never trusted me. She thinks I'm a thief in this house." She turned to him, voice trembling, but edged like a blade. "Do something. If she doesn't hand over control, we have nothing. This house, even that little company you're working at, it's all in her name. If she changes the will, we lose everything." I watched them in silence like an outsider. Daniel hesitated, twisting the hem of his shirt. He wasn't cruel enough to take my side and not brave enough to stand up to his wife. Seeing him falter, Brianna stepped closer, tears streaming, her voice cutting. "What about Nora? She needs a few. Your mom grips everything like we're outsiders. If you don't make her sign the power of attorney again, don't blame me for doing what you won't like." I recognized the threat instantly. It wasn't the first time I'd seen her use tears to manipulate, but this time, I didn't feel only the clarity of watching her slide deeper into the trap she set. Daniel dropped his gaze, voice small. "I'll talk to Mom. But Brianna, don't make this worse." She inhaled sharply and nodded, but triumph flickered in her eyes. I said nothing. I simply stood and went to my study. Behind me, their voices faded and then stopped. I closed the door, leaned back in my chair, and woke my computer. On the desk, my phone lit up with a system alert. Interior cameras restored. I smiled to myself. No one knew that last week I'd asked Pauline to contact Robert's old tech to restore the entire security system, the one Brianna had accidentally disconnected. Now, every corner of the house could capture every conversation, gesture, and glance. I opened the playback and selected the last hour. On screen, Brianna sat close to Daniel in the living room, her voice tight, her face twisted with anger. "You have to make her sign the trust again. Once she loses signing authority, this house will be ours. After that, we do what we want." I paused the frame, scrubbed back, and played it again, listening to each word clearly. "This house will be ours." I leaned back and drew a long breath. My heart pounded not from shock, but from certainty. Everything stood naked now. She wasn't pretending to be the dutiful daughter-in-law anymore. I saved the video as Brianna proof. 1. Then I opened the kitchen camera, their conversation afterward. Daniel sat with his head down while she stood close, voice low. "If you won't do it, I'll tell the lawyer she needs guardianship. Once the medical file goes in, she won't be able to fight." I paused again. My hand trembled slightly, but my eyes were brighter than ever. There was no room left for doubt or hope that they'd realize their mistake. The part of me that pitied them died the second I heard "this house will be ours." I moved the cursor to cloud backup. Pauline had set up a private encrypted drive for me. Every piece of evidence would be mirrored there, safe and untouchable. I sat watching the screen for a long time. The pain was gone. All that remained was the stillness of someone who has seen the truth to the end. What I felt now was resolve, cold and precise like a surgeon's blade. Robert used to say, "When they think you're weak, that's when you're strongest." I smiled a little. Yes, right now they think I'm weak, alone, and beaten. That certainty will be what breaks them. I jotted a note, October 14th, 8:42 a.m., Brianna threatens Daniel. Quote, once she loses signing authority, this house will be ours. I closed the notebook and set down the pen. Outside, gray clouds gathered and wind scraped the window like a warning. But inside me, the wind had changed. When I stepped out of the room, Brianna was in the hallway pretending to wipe tears. She looked at me with a strange smile. Mom, can we talk? I tilted my head and answered softly, almost flat. Of course, but this time I'll be the one listening. And you should choose every word carefully. She froze for a moment, and in her eyes, I saw for the first time a flicker of real fear. I kept walking down the stairs, my legs steadier than ever. In my head, the plan was set. No need to shout, no need to strike back with anger. I only needed the truth and I had it in my hands. Outside, the sky was turning a deep gray. A storm was coming. But this time, I would be the one holding the eye. And when it passed, only the liars would be swept away. I've always believed every storm has its time. And that Sunday night was exactly when it needed to break. I chose dinner as usual. The meal was set out at 7 o'clock, just like all the years since Robert was alive. On the table was the beef stew Daniel loves and the apple pie. Nora always asks for seconds of. I arranged everything as if nothing were out of the ordinary. At first, the atmosphere was calm. Brianna forced a smile. Daniel tried to look composed, and I stayed quiet, slowly pouring water into the glasses. The kitchen lights cast a soft yellow glow warm enough to hide the ice underneath. I heard spoons touch plates, thin laughter mixed with strain. It felt like the whole house was holding its breath, waiting for me to begin. When Daniel set down his knife, I spoke gently, my voice so even it surprised me. This is a good meal. I'm glad we're all sitting together again. Brianna smiled tight and brittle. Yes, I think we should forget the past and start over. I tilted my head at her, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I think so too. But before we start over, there's a small thing I want you both to hear. The room went still. I reached into my handbag on the chair and took out my phone. In a few seconds, the screen's light reflected on their faces. I opened the folder I'd prepared the file named Brianna, Proof 1. I set the phone in the middle of the table and pressed play. Brianna's voice rang out clear, cold, filling the small kitchen like a sentence being read. You have to make her sign the trust again. Once she loses signing authority, this house will be ours. The air froze. Daniel stared at the phone screen, his lips parting without sound. Brianna went pale, eyes wide, hands stiff on her lap. A few seconds later, she let out a sharp, brittle laugh, trying to steady herself. Mom, are you serious? I was just joking. Who would actually say something like that? I didn't answer. I stopped that recording and played the second one. This time, it was her threatening Daniel, voice low and controlled. If you won't do it, I'll tell the lawyer she needs guardianship. Once the medical file goes in, she won't be able to fight. I paused and looked straight at Brianna, also a joke. No one laughed. Daniel sat frozen, hands on the table, his face bone white. I watched his eyes flick between me and his wife like someone waking up in the middle of a nightmare. I opened my bag and pulled out a thick folder. The cover had the bank's logo Belmont branch hand, a legal verification seal. I set it neatly in the center of the table, my voice soft but clear. This is the bank's verification. Every document Brianna filed the other defaked medical forms. Forged signatures, invalid seals all confirmed as forgery. I slid the folder toward them. The paper skimmed across the wood with a small sound that felt heavy as stone. Daniel's hands shook as he opened the pages, eyes moving over the red stamps. The words, forgery identified. His hands trembled, then stopped at the signature line. Oh God, he whispered. Is this real? I answered evenly. Real. And if I hadn't gone to the bank that day, she would have succeeded. Brianna shot to her feet, voice catching. No, I wasn't trying to take anything. I just wanted to help you. You've been forgetting things. I was scared. I cut in, eyes fixed on her. You weren't scared of me being weak, Brianna. You were scared I was still clear. She stood frozen. Then tears spilled over. Daniel still hadn't lifted his head. His hands covered his face. The kitchen was dead quiet. The only sound the clock ticking on the wall, keeping time for a funeral march. I looked at my son. For the first time, he seemed small not in age, but under the weight of shame. Son, I said softly, you once promised you wouldn't let anyone hurt me, but today you sat still and watched it happen. Daniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He only bowed his head, voice breaking. "Mom, I'm sorry I didn't answer right away." I gave a small nod, then turned to Brianna. She had collapsed into the chair, shoulders shaking. All that was left of her now was smeared makeup and raw fear. I spoke light but sharp as a thin blade. "I'm not crazy, Brianna. I'm more awake than you think." It was like the oxygen disappeared. The words rang out, spread through the kitchen, and fell onto the cold tile like a bell ending the service. I pulled out my chair and sat again, carefully stacking the papers, the recordings, the confirmations. My voice stayed even, not loud, not soft, just enough. All of this is stored legally. One copy at my attorney's office, one in a secure drive. I don't need to shout, and I don't need to beg anyone to believe me. The truth knows how to speak for itself. Daniel was silent for a long time. Finally, he lifted his head, eyes red, and murmured, "I didn't think, Brianna, why did you do it?" Brianna looked at him, sobbing. I was afraid of losing everything. Your mom never shares. She always acts like she's the only one who's right. I just wanted a little control, a little security." I looked at her and sighed. "Security? You can't build security on lies, Brianna. You can buy comfort, but you can't buy back trust once it's gone." She dropped her head and cried like a child. Daniel just sat there, eyes empty, hands limp. I stood and gathered the papers, my voice barely more than a breeze. "I won't call the police tonight, but tomorrow morning I'll be with my attorney. I can't live with you two for one more day." No one stopped me. Only Brianna's muffled sobs trailed behind. I walked to the sink, laid my hand on the cold stone, and looked out the window. Beyond it was the garden Robert used to tend, now swallowed by the dark. In the glass, I saw my face holder harder, but no longer trembling. Behind me, I heard Daniel say softly, like someone who just lost something precious, "Mom, I don't know what to say." I turned back and smiled, light as air. "Then don't say anything. Just listen." I walked slowly toward the door and stopped at the threshold. "I spent my life teaching you right from wrong, but in the end, you made me do the opposite. Teach someone else a lesson in honesty, and you're going to witness it." I didn't look back. I went straight up the stairs, leaving behind a kitchen that had once been warm, now thick with the smell of cold food and dense silence. At the top step, I heard Daniel call out, voice tight with tears, "Mom, I'm sorry." I stopped without turning and spoke quietly, steady but firm. "I know, but sorry isn't an end. It's just the start of waking up." Then I kept going, step by steady step, like someone who had just crossed the threshold of the past and was walking straight into the light of truth. On the morning of the trial, a light rain fell. I went to the Belmont County Courthouse with Pauline, the friend and attorney who had stood by me these past months. She opened a black umbrella, covering half of me from the gray drizzle. The air carried the metallic chill of iron, just like my mood, hard with no room for mercy. The courthouse grounds were unusually crowded. A few local reporters stood outside taking notes and photos. News of the inheritance fraud case, where a mother was betrayed by her daughter-in-law, had spread over the past few days. Drawing curiosity, I didn't look at them. I walked slowly, my old black shoes hitting the stone steps in solid, certain taps. Pauline laid a hand on my shoulder, her voice low and firm. "You made it here, Marjorie. Now let justice speak." I nodded. In my hands was a thick file. Every piece of evidence, from recordings and videos to bank statements, numbered and neatly sealed. Each page was the result of sleepless nights under a warm lamp, writing down every small detail. When we entered the courtroom, Brianna was already there. She sat beside her own attorney, hair perfectly styled, makeup meticulous, but her eyes couldn't hide the panic. Daniel sat behind her, not at her table. My son's face was gaunt-like. He'd aged 10 years in a few weeks. The judge was Eleanor Fitch, a woman around 60, stern but fair. When she struck the gavel, the sound split the room in two: truth on one side, lies on the other. Top Pauline stood and spoke briefly but sharply. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Marjorie Hale, was exploited and deceived by her own daughter, Brianna Hale. This individual forged medical records and signatures and used my client's bank accounts to attempt to seize her assets in clear violation of elder protection laws and financial fraud statutes." I sat still, eyes on the bench, not looking at Brianna, but I heard her quick, shallow breaths, and I felt a tightness in my chest. Not pity, regret for someone who destroyed herself with ambition. Brianna's attorney stood talking fast, trying to sound calm. "Your Honor, my client acted out of genuine concern. She believed her mother-in-law was experiencing cognitive issues and simply wanted to manage finances to avoid risk. This was a misunderstanding. There was no intent to steal." Pauline gave a faint smile, the kind that belongs to someone who already knows she'll win. She opened her case and set a small USB drive on the evidence table. If it was a misunderstanding, then let the court hear my opposing party's own voice. The room went silent. When the recording played, every word cut the air like a blade. You have to make her sign the trust again. Once she loses signing authority, this house will be ours. Brianna's voice filled the courtroom clear cold. Precise. No one spoke, only the sound of rain at the windows. Judge Eleanor raised an eyebrow and leaned forward. Pauline played the second clip, Brianna's threat to Daniel. If you won't do it, I'll tell the lawyer she needs guardianship. Once the medical file goes in, she won't be able to fight. When it ended, there was nothing left to say. Brianna sat frozen, hands clasped together, shaking. The judge looked at her, voice stern. Miss Hale, is that your voice? Brianna swallowed hard, lips trembling. I don't remember. Maybe someone edited. Eleanor cut in firm. Forensic audio confirms no edits. The voice is a 100% match. Do you have anything else to add? No reply. Brianna bowed her head, shoulders curling like the air had doubled in weight. Pauline submitted more verified bank documents, statements, confirmation of forged signatures, and a report from the real physician who stated he never signed any diagnosis of cognitive impairment. Everything laid out precise. Airtight. The judge reviewed each page, eyes cold as steel. Finally, she set the stack down and looked straight at Brianna. These actions are not only civil violations, they are criminal. You intentionally forged documents, exploited an elderly person, and violated property rights. It landed like a second hammer blow. Brianna broke into sobs, crumpling into her chair, hands over her face. Daniel, sitting behind, stood. He walked forward slowly, voice unsteady but clear. Your Honor, may I speak? I'm Mrs. Marjorie Hale's son. I stayed silent too long. I knew my wife was wrong and I didn't stop her. I accept responsibility for my cowardice and I apologize to my mother. He bowed deeply, voice tight. I looked at my son and my heart twisted. The hurt, the betrayal, the anger in me seemed to melt for a moment, leaving only fatigue and a gentle sadness, like a damp cloth laid over my heart. The judge nodded, voice softer but still firm. An apology is a good beginning, but justice must still be served. She lifted the gavel and struck it 3 clean times. The court orders all of Mrs. Marjorie Hale's assets and accounts are to be restored. All related transactions are frozen and under investigation. The defendant, Brianna Hale, is charged with forgery and financial abuse of an elder. Court is adjourned. The sound echoed through the room. I closed my eyes for a moment, not from joy, relief. Something heavy in me, after months of strain, was finally set down. As people rose, I stood and walked slowly into the hallway. My heels tapped evenly on the stone floor. Cold air swept in from the big door, carrying the smell of rain, the scent of freedom. Daniel caught up and walked beside me. He didn't speak, just walked, his hands clenching and unsealed enching. At last, he said, low and hoarse, Mom, I'll take care of Norand. I'll fix what I broke. I stopped and looked at him. You don't need to fix the past, Daniel. Live so Nora doesn't have to repeat it. He nodded, eyes wet. Brianna was led out of the courtroom, hands shaking, face drained. She glanced back. I didn't look at her. I turned away and stepped out the big door. Outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds were thinning, and late sunlight angled through the wet leaves. I drew a deep breath, my chest lighter than it had been in months. Pauline came out and gently took my hand. Justice was late, but it came. I smiled, eyes on the end of the Raynette Street. Yes, some wounds don't need revenge, only proof that we were right. I walked down the courthouse steps, the wind tossing my silver hair. Traffic hummed in the distance, life falling back into its ordinary rhythm. And in the middle of it, I no longer felt like a victim. I was a survivor, standing steady in the wreckage, carrying the calm of someone who had won herself back. That day, for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I felt only freedom, the kind no one can ever sign away again. 2 weeks after the trial, on a late afternoon with sunlight spilling gold across the lawn, I heard a gentle knock. When I opened the door, Daniel stood there, thinner, eyes hollow, his shirt wrinkled like he'd walked out of a storm that wouldn't end. He was quiet for a few seconds, then spoke softly. Mom, can I come in? I nodded and stepped aside, letting him into the small lakeside house I just moved into. It was peaceful here in Lee, a 10-minute drive from town, but just far enough to breathe without the past chasing you. Daniel sat down, hands locked together, unsure where to begin. After a while, he said, Mom, I know it's over, but I can't live with myself if I don't say this. I sat across from him waiting. He took a breath, voice shaking but honest. I was manipulated, Mom. Brianna knew how to make me feel guilty, to make me believe that if I didn't take her side, I was a bad husband, a bad father. I didn't see that I was losing you piece by piece. I looked at my son and I wasn't angry anymore. Just a soft sadness like wind across the water. I spoke quietly, slow as breathing. No one controls a person with a conscience. Daniel, they only use your silence. And you let silence speak for you for too long. He bowed his head, his knuckles whitening. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. I just hope you'll let me be your son again. I stood, walked to him, and laid a hand on his shoulder. You've always been my son. Sometimes we have to walk through loss to see who's truly still there. His eyes filled. When he left, I watched until his car disappeared behind the trees along the shore. Relief spread through me, not because I'd forgiven, but because I no longer carried resentment. I started over at 70. This little house by the lake used to be the getaway Robert and I bought back in the 80s. Now it's truly home. Every morning, I wake before the sun has time to slip through the curtains. I roll out my yoga mat in the living room, breathe deep, and feel the cool air on my skin. Some mornings, the lake lies under a light veil of fog. I sit by the window with a cup of peppermint tea and turn the pages of a book. The only sounds are sparrows calling on the porch and the whisper of wind through the curtains. That feeling quiet, whole, completely free was something I never truly had in all those years of being a wife. A mother, a woman who endured. I planted a small garden by the porch, yellow daisies, lavender, and a few white roses Robert always loved. I tend them daily and talk to them like old friends. Sometimes I think if flowers had souls, they'd understand me better than the people I once lived with. In the afternoon, I walk the lakeshore with a small notebook to capture stray thoughts, old memories, things I want to leave for Sophie, the one grandchild I fully trust. Sophie visits every weekend. She's 12, hair the color of honey, eyes as clear as the lake out front. Every time Daniel's car stops, she jumps out and shouts, "Grandma, my hero." I laugh and open my arms. She hugs me tight, the scent of apple shampoo in her hair making my throat catch. In her eyes, there's no pity, only pride. As if I'd stepped out of a fairy tale where the hero is an old woman. That afternoon, we sat on the porch. Sophie bit into a slice of my fresh apple pie and asked, "Grandma, why aren't you mad at Dad anymore? He looks so sad." I smoothed her hair and smiled. Anger only wears you out, sweetheart. Some people aren't bad, they're weak. And sometimes the best thing we can do is refuse to be weak with them. Sophie thought for a moment, then looked up. "Grandma, I'm scared that when I grow up, people won't believe me like they didn't believe you." I looked into her eyes and saw myself years ago, naive, wanting to be understood, wanting to be trusted. I squeezed her hand, my voice slow but certain. "You don't need everyone to believe you. You need to believe yourself. And never let anyone speak for you. Sophie, once you let them decide who you are, you lose your own voice." She nodded, eyes bright with understanding. She rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I want to be strong like you." I smiled, gentle and deep. "No, sweetheart. I'm not stronger than anyone else. I just learned that silence can be a way to fight when it walks with the truth." A soft breeze stirred, carrying a hint of lavender. I looked out at the lake where the sunset lay like a thin sheet of silk. Peace settled in my chest. Sometimes I think of Brianna not to resent her, but to remind myself that greed and deceit always carry a price. As for me, I finally paid off the debt of blind trust. At night, I sit at my desk and write. Happiness isn't being loved forever. It's knowing when to leave so you can keep yourself. Then I set down the pen and listened to the crickets and the faint slap of water on the shore. I smile, close my eyes, and feel the night breeze in my silver hair. My life, which once felt withered, is blooming again. Quietly, steadily, and brightly in its own way. And I know that when the sun rises, I'll start another day no longer afraid of losing anyone and never letting anyone speak for me again. A year after the trial, I stood on a small stage in Belmont's downtown hall beneath a new plaque gleaming with the words, "Hail Foundation for Elder Justice." It's the nonprofit I founded with the assets I reclaimed with one purpose: to support older women who've suffered financial abuse or been stripped of control by their own families. When I lifted the microphone, faces in the audience, mostly silver-haired women like me, looked up, eyes full of understanding. Some nodded, some quietly wiped tears. I knew many of them had been called useless, too old to be heard. I wanted them to know none of us are truly weak. I spoke low and steady, each word etched into the air. People think age is a sign of weakness. In truth, we're just watching in silence. When you've lived long enough, you learn when to keep quiet and when to speak. Applause rolled through the hall like a warm wave. I smiled and turned to my side where Sophie stood. She wore a simple white dress, her eyes bright, her small hand gripping mine. I felt the warmth in that palm, the passing of the torch to a new generation. Clearer and stronger. Sophie looked up and whispered, "Grandma, you're my hero." I squeezed her hand and answered softly, "But sure. No, sweetheart. Real heroes don't let others define them, man. You'll be one of them." Late light poured through the tall windows, reflecting off the bronze plaque. For a moment, I could almost see Robert smiling somewhere, proud that I hadn't let fear decide the rest of my life. After the ceremony, I sat as the hall emptied. Outside, the sun was slipping behind the river, a pale band of orange across the horizon. I sipped tea, listened to the wind, and felt my heart light as paper. I had walked through betrayal, loss, and justice. And now there was only peace. I watched Sophie helping staff clean up and realized something simple. I hadn't just reclaimed assets. I'd reclaimed a voice of my own. And for women like me, if you're still listening, thank you for walking with me to the end. I believe that wherever you are, big city or small town, you understand that justice and dignity don't have an expiration date. Tell me where you're watching from so I'll know how far this story has traveled. And if, like me, you believe that women who stand up at any age deserve to be heard, please leave a comment or subscribe so we can keep telling stories of courage, freedom, and stubborn love. I'm Marjorie Hale. And here's the last lesson I want to leave. Don't let anyone speak for you, because your voice is the greatest power no one can take.